2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tonight on Farage with me, Patrick Christie's, we have got a huge update on Nigel's bank accounts from the man himself. We will be hearing an exclusive from Nigel very shortly. But first, we have thousands of Afghan refugees at risk of homelessness, a minister launching a helpline for veterans on the streets, and, of course, a housing crisis. So I am asking, pretty simply, is Britain full? And is it time to abolish the Lords after Rishi Sunak was thwarted by those silly, stuffy old duffers in the upper chamber again? And that plus hello being blamed for Brexit. But before all of this, of course, it is time for your news headlines with the wonderful Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the top story tonight is the chair of the Privileges Committee, Tory MP Sir Bernard Jenkin, could be facing a police investigation into a lockdown party at Conservative Party headquarters. Sir Bernard has responded tonight in a statement saying it's not appropriate to comment on a continuing investigation. The Metropolitan Police are reopening their investigation into the Jingle and Mingle lockdown party at Conservative Party HQ on December the 8th, 2020, which Tory MP Bernard Jenkin is said to have attended. 2 COVID regulation breaches allegedly took place during that party. Well, the Prime Minister has been saying today that, refusing to say rather, when he'll fulfil his promise to stop small boat crossings over the English Channel. But he's denied the plan is on hold amid legal obstacles stopping the government's plan to process migrants in Rwanda. He was questioned today by senior MPs of the Liaison Committee, and he denied there was no plan B if the Supreme Court did not overturn the ruling blocking the removal of migrants to Rwanda. He says ministers will challenge the appeal court judgment confidently and vigorously. Junior doctors voted today to extend their strike action until at least January 2024. Members of the Hospital Consultants and Specialists Association in England decided to extend their strike action by another 6 months, after 96.5% of them voted in favour of it. The reballot result came as junior doctors prepared to walk out for 5 days from July the 13th to the 18th. The Prime Minister said the strikes are making NHS waiting lists longer.
Already had 500,000 people's care be impacted by industrial action, and I don't think that's right. I think everyone can see the economic context that we're in and the necessity for the government to make responsible decisions.
Teachers' unions are calling on the government to release recommendations on pay made by an independent body. NEU members in England are staging fresh strikes tomorrow and on Friday in their ongoing dispute over pay. All 4 education unions rejected the government's latest pay offer of £1,000 lump sum and a 4.5% pay rise. And Thames Water was today fined £3.3 million for polluting 2 rivers in 2017. The company pleaded guilty, admitting to discharging millions of litres of undiluted sewage into the Gatwick Stream in Sussex and the River Mole in Surrey over the course of 6.5 hours. The incident killed more than 1,400 fish. The judge said she believed Thames Water had also demonstrated a deliberate attempt to mislead the Environment Agency over the incident. That's the latest news. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Just a reminder, we will be having some exclusive content from Nigel Farage, the man himself, very, very shortly. But before that, Britain is full. There is no room at the inn. The facts are this. We no longer have enough room for our own people. We don't have room for legal migrants. We don't have room for refugees. And we don't have room for illegal migrants. And yet lefty loons continue to live in denial. The House of Lords, who some think are just a group of out-of-touch old duffers on the taxpayer-funded take, live in denial. Part of the benefit of being an island is that we can pull up the drawbridge. We have a natural moat around us. We should be doing just that instead of rolling out the red carpet across the Channel and indeed to everybody else. At least 271,000 people are homeless in England today. That includes 123,000 children. Our ridiculous desire to help every single refugee in the world, pretty much, has produced a result that Stevie Wonder could have seen coming a mile off. We're about to have about 8,000 homeless Afghan refugees on the streets of Britain. They've been served notice at their taxpayer-funded accommodation and they'll be asked to fend for themselves. Well, these are legal refugees who we panicked and we said, yes, please, 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 come to Britain. And now we tell them, sorry, we can't actually look after you. Look, one way to prove to the asylum seeker population that Britain's streets aren't paved with gold, I suppose, is to actually make them sleep on them. But this is incredibly dangerous. I don't know about you, but I don't see it ending that well if we have thousands of angry and disillusioned Afghans roaming the streets. Just to accommodate the number of legal migrants that we have, England needs 616,000 extra homes each year, which isn't happening, is it? In fact, around just 233,000 new homes were supplied in 2021 to 22. And yet, we have people like the Archbishop of Canterbury standing up in the House of Lords and tearing the illegal migration bill to shreds, helping to make it easier for people to pretend to be kids and enter British schools, aiding people pretending to be gay so they can claim asylum from a Middle Eastern nation. In fact, he wants to go further. He wants to get the government to sign up to a 10-year international refugee plan. He said, Jesus calls us to welcome the stranger. Oh, he's quoting Jesus now, is he? That's good stuff. I wonder what Jesus would have made of the same Archbishop not really doing enough to keep churches open during lockdown and shutting Christians out. It's not actually the humane thing to do, though, is it? To keep letting people into a country that is full up, that can't support them. What Welby wants or what the Lords are pushing is, in my view, inhumane. It is inhumane to make British people lose their jobs to accommodate illegal migrants. It is inhumane to bump Brits down the social housing waiting list to accommodate illegal immigrants. It is inhumane to ask the taxpayer to keep paying for this. It's inhumane all round. The people pushing this open arms approach to the world are doing it to make themselves feel better about themselves at the expense of everybody else. The humane thing to do, in my view, is to just admit now that we are full up. So I'm asking you, is this country full? Well, I am very, very pleased to say that I'm joined in the studio by Mark Homer, who is the co-founder and director of Progressive Property. He's in the studio with me right now. Look, thank you very, very much. When it comes to housing, is Britain full?
Well, if I just think of our situation in Peterborough, we're managing something like 1,200 tenants. So about 4% of the population in that city. We put a house on last week to let, little 3-bed sort of starter home. and we got 70 inquiries. If we'd let that run for sort of 2.5 weeks, we'd have got something like 200 inquiries. Not all of them can proceed, but you know, probably 50, 60 of them would have been able to. So from our point of view, in terms of rental property, what we're seeing in terms of demand versus the supply that we have, there is a huge imbalance.
And let's be honest as well, if people are, the vast majority of people who are looking to enter the rental sector, it's probably because they can't afford to buy at the moment, and, you know, that is issue itself. Are we building enough to accommodate the amount of people that we are allowing in, do you think?
Well, there is a massive imbalance between what we're building. Let's say we did, I don't know, 160, 170,000 homes last year, year before. Going back over the last decade, the government seems to believe that we need something like 300,000 homes every year built. We haven't met that target for many, many years now. It's probably a lot more. I mean, if you've got, you know, net migration that we know about of 616,000 last year and all the others that we don't know about, it's got to be a lot more than that. But, you know, with the planning system the way it is, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Well, this is it. It seems like to be this ridiculous double-pronged approach. Now, I can completely understand that if you do live somewhere rurally, you do not want a whopping great big housing estate going up at the back of your house. I get that. Absolutely. I wouldn't want that. But then at the same time, we do need housing, OK? How do you see this ending? Because, like I said before, anyone could have seen it coming, where if we are inviting in so many people, not just the legal lot, but then you've got your kind of refugee brigade as well, then you've got the illegal migrants. At some point, you have to say what we are now apparently saying to around 8,000 Afghans, which is, sorry, you've got to fend for yourself, lads. And that's got problems. So how do you see this ending in terms of the housing?
Well, you know, it's just going to keep on getting worse and worse until there are some major changes made to the planning system. They may have to increase, you know, the building of social houses. They're going to have to probably row back on a lot of the landlord taxes, the regulation, and generally sort of stop being sort of anti, you know, housing, planning, growth, building, landlords, you know, all that stuff needs encouragement, it needs incentive.
Can I ask, have you ever been approached by government or whoever else about some of the accommodation that you've got?
No, they wouldn't. I mean, you know, the local council would get involved. Obviously, we have a lot of licensing, a lot of compliance, so we're in contact with them, you know, continuously. But in terms of central government, we wouldn't hear from them. Because
if I would just ask you to stay there, if that's all right, because I'm just going to bring in my next guest now, and I think this is important, because in light of what we just heard there, which is absolutely spot on about the lack of housing, the demand for housing, and this is in the traditional rental sector, the lack of building going forward. We are, of course, now having to put people who've just come across the channel in hotels. We all know about that. This has been an issue for a very, very long period of time. But something that was not raised enough until it became a massive problem is the issue that this poses for people who work in those hotels. And now, around 100 people have lost their jobs in the Llanelli in Wales after the hotel that they work at is now set to house asylum seekers. So staff at the Stradley Park Hotel and Spa were told last week that the business would be closed. Around 200 migrants could be moved in on the 10th of July. Victoria Price worked at the hotel and very, very sadly has lost her job. And I am very pleased and very grateful to say that Victoria joins me now, I believe. So, Victoria, thank you very, very much. I think we have you down the line. Firstly, very, very sorry to hear about this. Can you just tell us what's happened to you, please?
Oh, well, we found out about a month ago from now that Wales Online, it was on Wales Online that we were all going to lose our jobs. The hotel put out a letter saying that we wasn't. They don't know anything about it. But obviously we all were. And last Tuesday then we had an emergency meeting. The hotel managers called us all in and just said everybody will be losing their jobs from last Sunday.
OK, and so what kind of support was on offer for you? Have you been given some kind of redundancy payment, or how's it worked out?
Well, I've only been working for the company for 15 months, so I wouldn't be entitled to any redundancy money. I did look, as soon as we found out a month ago that our jobs were going to be gone, the girls in the spa, we all looked for new jobs. So luckily, and we've all got different jobs now, local community have really been kind and, you know, offered us work and things like that. So.
How do you feel about it? Because it's great that you now have other employment. The problem for a lot of people, and by my counting, just given how many asylum seeker hotels we now have across the UK, there's roughly about 20,000 people who will have been made unemployed, quite possibly more than that. And depending on what area you're in, obviously, that means it is either quite easy or very difficult to go and get another job. But there must have been a time for you where you were thinking, good grief, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah, we are angry, worried, scared. I think we're all in the same boat. Everybody's just been on the last nerve, really, just trying to see what was going to happen. I don't know. It's a lot of people working in that hotel. A lot of foreign people. They've been there years. Really good workers, all losing their job. And angry and very disappointed because we have no answers from anybody. You know, the Home Office, they wouldn't answer. They wouldn't speak to anybody. They wouldn't give anybody answers for nothing or no support.
We are currently looking at, or if you're watching us on TV or online, some fantastic photographs of, as we were anyway, the inside of that hotel, and it looks wonderful, I must say. I mean, it looks quite luxurious, actually, in certain parts of it. And are you quite surprised, then, that people who work at that hotel, and presumably as well the tourism and the revenue that it would bring to that local area, are being cast aside so that, you know, several hundred asylum seekers can live in it?
Yeah, totally. It's the community of Furness is very small. They've had protesters outside from the local community, just trying to fight it, but they've had no voice. No one's listened to them. Just nobody's had a leg to stand on. Right opposite the Stradale Park Hotel, there's a beautiful park, Park Howard, very busy. So people are worried.
And presumably you are worried for yourself and your colleagues, and that's understandable because of the financial implications of losing your job. And I am very, very pleased to hear that you have now found alternative employment, and that is great. Not ideal, of course, but it's great that you managed to get something. But there's other aspects to this, and I think you might have been alluding to it there, which is kind of local safety, really? I mean, we don't know a lot about these people, do we?
It's all about local safety. You know, it's a process to come into the country. Everybody's vetted. These people are not. So how can you just feel safe? You know, people have got beautiful homes there. They don't know what to do. They can't sell. People are not going to buy there. People are scared.
So people are scared, and you've been asked to compromise a lot, Victoria. I dare say your family have as well, and so have the locals. You've been asked to compromise your place of work for a period of time. You're asked to compromise your income. You've been asked to compromise potentially the value of the local properties, the local tourism industry, your safety, everything.
Totally.
Really.
Yeah, totally.
And that is, I think, probably a bit too much to ask of you, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because it was put on us. We weren't asked. We were just told, and trying to get answers, and we had nowhere to get answers from.
So what would your message be to the Home Office, to Rishi Sunak, and to the powers that be? And as well, in light of the fact, Victoria, as well, I don't know if you saw, we mentioned it a bit earlier on, that last night the House of Lords just ripped the teeth out of the government's illegal migration bill, which is, of course, designed to stop the boats. A lot of these lords will be on 300 odd quid a day just for turning up. You know, they'll probably have a couple of nice properties of their own, etc. I dare say some of the kids go to private school. They have their transport subsidised by the taxpayer on expenses. They've got subsidised restaurants for them to eat at. Their lives are not affected like yours by the decisions that they make. I just wonder whether or not you've got any messages for them.
Well, I just think they should hang their heads in shame. They should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves, what they're doing to the local tax-paying people all over the country. And I do think it's time now that the country all stick together and do something about it, because we're not getting helped. We're not getting a say in anything.
OK, just one last one for you, Victoria, there. That's a really interesting point. You think the country should come together and do something about it? I mean, what, like some kind of march or something?
I don't know. Nothing aggressive.
No, of course.
Just, you know, something to get together and just make a stand, because I think our voice would be stronger together.
Well, Victoria, can I just say thank you very, very much, because it does take a lot of bravery, especially if you're not used to it, to come on national television and have a chat and everything. And I really do appreciate it. And you will have done a lot of people a lot of good out there, Victoria, because unfortunately your situation is all too common in Britain at the moment, the way it is. It's Victoria Price there, who is... good luck to you in the new job as well. Good luck in the new job. I hope it works out well. Victoria, who sadly initially lost her job anyway at that hotel. I'm just going to bring back in Mark, if that's OK. Mark Homer there is the co-founder and director of Progressive Property. And this is what we're seeing, isn't it? Because, you know, we're not building enough, as you were talking about earlier on. There isn't enough existing housing stock. And so we're putting people in hotels, and then those people end up losing their job. And presumably the property prices next to an asylum seeker hotel, well, they're not going up, I would imagine.
Well, they're certainly not going up. I mean, local residents are up in arms. I know local councils are not particularly happy with this as well. I know our local councils certainly aren't. But, you know, I think this is the Ministry of Justice, stroke Serco. They're looking... I think there are more going into houses now rather than into hotels. But it's being exacerbated. They have taken over our local hotel right in the town centre, the Great Northern. Right. That's got asylum seekers in it. I think there's legal action ongoing in terms of planning enforcement. Yeah, local people are not happy. Yeah.
No, OK. Well, look, thank you very, very much for coming in, sharing your kind of wisdom about the property market as well. It is much appreciated, and I hope to chat to you very, very soon as well. It's Mark Homer there. Right, next on Farage. It's 6 months since Rishi Sunak made his pledges. How is he doing? I want to find out all about that. And I also want to remind you as well, in this big banking crisis that we're seeing at the moment when it comes to Nigel, we have got Nigel on. Nigel will be chatting to you very, very soon with an exclusive update on where he's at with this ridiculous bank cancellation policy that seems to be taking place. See you in a sec.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, as we learn that most high street banks are signed up to Stonewall's diversity schemes, the banking saga has taken another twist, as the BBC have reported that the reason for Nigel's bank account closure was due to him, quotes, falling below the wealth limit, a claim which he has denied. We have reached out to Coutts today for a comment on the situation, but we were simply told that they don't comment on individual cases and provided us with no clarity on the situation whatsoever, which is interesting, isn't it? Because it would appear that they were willing to comment on an individual case and release potentially very, very private and personal information to the BBC. Well, we actually, frankly, interrupted Nigel's holiday earlier on, and he was good enough to speak to us with this exclusive clip.
So I'm trying to have a quiet couple of days in France. I did get to go and see the Bayeux Tapestry this morning, which, for anyone that's not done it, I would recommend. But this bank saga continues. So Coutts, who I hadn't named, but Coutts decided to brief their friends at the FT and the BBC that I'd fallen below the financial threshold limit for having an account. And the BBC and much of the media believe that to be entirely true. Point is, they've never ever discussed any thresholds with me. And this afternoon, Simon Jack at the BBC, to his credit, has tweeted that a number of Coutts customers have been in touch with him to say they too are below the so-called financial threshold, and yet their accounts haven't been closed. More interestingly, why were the bank discussing my financial situation publicly with the BBC and the Financial Times? Surely that's not ethical, and possibly it's not even legal. And the idea that I was offered an account at NatWest, part of the group, that was only at 5 minutes to 7 last Thursday, before I went live on GB News, promising that I would tell all. They haven't as yet offered me a business account. And I'd left NatWest 10 years ago because they refused to provide me personally with any foreign currency accounts. They told me on Friday that they didn't think that I was a PEP, a politically exposed person. But now 9 banks have said they don't want my business because I am a politically exposed person. Other news, there are international credit ratings agencies, and I've got reports back from 2 of them this morning, having put in, through my lawyers, subject access requests. And both of them say that both me and my company are politically exposed persons. And that's where we are. Crackpot legislation that came into Britain from, of course, our friends in the European Union, but it's up to each bank to interpret, of course, how they use it and for whom. And I'm just really absolutely gutted at the absolute dishonesty of Coutts in the way they're handling all of this. None of this, of course, solves any of my problems, but that's where we are.
OK, well, bombshell stuff from Nigel there, Nigel Farage. Joining me to discuss this, I'm very pleased to have both these chaps in the studio with me. It's going to be fascinating. We've got Constantine Kissin, who's the co-host of the podcast Trigonometry, and Anthony Brown, Conservative MP for South Cambridgeshire. Crucially as well, as former Chief Executive of the British Bankers Association. I'm going to go to you if that's all right first, because you were chuttering on a little bit there whilst Nigel was talking. I could see you were getting quite agitated about it. He mentioned the fact that what Coutts have reportedly done might not even be legal. Go on.
Well, I'm shocked that Nigel is finding out from the media personal details about his financial situation, and certainly on the face of it, it looks like somebody in Coutts has been briefing it out to the media, the FT and the BBC, and I really think Coutts ought to investigate that, because that is clearly completely unethical. Whether it's illegal or not, I don't know, but no bank should be doing that, absolutely not.
And look, you are kind of all over the general policies and legalities of just banking in general, really. Given what we know about this so far, and I am inclined to take what Nigel says at face value. I think a lot of people are. I don't think there's much of a reason for him to try to tie anything up or lie about it. He's got supposedly 9 different banks as well that have responded in a similar way. What do you think is going on?
So I don't know. It could be a number of different things. So one, there is a real problem with the PEP, the politically exposed persons regime that he mentioned there. It is EU legislation which we brought in, as we like to do. We gold-plated it. There's real problems about the definition. Who is a PEP? Who's not a PEP? He doesn't know whether it's a PEP. Some people are telling him it's a PEP. Others don't. It's not clearly legally defined. That needs sorting out. But also, it's ridiculous that it treats British politicians in the same way as it does foreign dictators with access to a whole state where they're taking money and you need to sort that out. And the government has now legislated, we got royal assent last week for the bill to reform the PEP regime. They have to do it within a year. That totally needs sorting out. There are an awful lot of MPs who are really frustrated with the fact that they can't get bank accounts, their own children can't get bank accounts. It's OTT. There is also a problem with communication here, and it's completely understandable. When people get their bank accounts closed down, if the bank doesn't explain to them why they're doing it, like in Nigel's case, and there is a thing called tipping off that banks aren't meant to do. So if there's a police investigation into you and about money laundering or fraud or whatever, then the bank isn't meant to say, we're closing your account because you're being investigated for fraud. That's tipping off somebody that they're being investigated. Absolutely shouldn't do that. And they sort of also say sometimes, well, actually, we don't want to say why we're not explaining, because then that would be tipping off as well. But clearly, the presumption should be that if they're closing somebody's bank account because they're fallen below the wealth limit, if you take Coutts as their word, then they should inform the customer why they're doing it. Because I'm literally hundreds of people who've had their bank accounts closed for different reasons, and the banks don't explain why, and they're completely confused and befuddled. And it's a really traumatic thing, having your bank account closed. It's not just inconvenient; it can completely destroy your life.
It's a way of turning you into a non-person, financially excluding you from society. I will come back to you, but Constantine, I'd love to bring you in now. Constantine Kittin, the fabulous host of Trigonometry. Well, go on, tell me a bit about your personal experiences then.
So what happened with us is Tide Bank informed us that they're closing our account. They refused to say why, and for 4 days, much to Anthony's point, we went back and forth with them, demanding to know why it is they're closing our account, and they refused. So at this point, of course, we made it public, and Trigonometry has over 1 million subscribers on different platforms, so we were able to get a media storm going, as a result of which they suddenly went from not telling us anything to saying this is being investigated as a matter of the highest priority. Now, having looked into it, their claim is that they're shutting down our account because we accept donations. And this comes back very much to the point that both Anthony and Nigel were making, which is this is about selective enforcement, allegedly at least, of rules that, I mean, we cannot be the only people in the world that have a bank account that accept donations. No. Right? So if our bank account is being closed because...
Well, every charity to start with.
Every charity accepts donations.
Right.
And donations from whom?
What makes us special in that respect, I don't know. But I think the serious point here, Patrick, is this. Both Nigel and us are able to bring media attention to this, and we're probably going to get either, we've got another account because banks reached out to us asking for our business. Right. But what if you're an ordinary person? You don't have that level of access to the media, and to the point that's been made, the bank shut down your account. You have no recourse, really, to get it reinstated. And if it's the only bank account you can get, that you made the point. It's really financial depersoning. And, it sort of makes me wonder, we all laugh off the conspiracy theorists who go on about how, well, if you take away someone's social media, then you take away their banking, then you take away their electricity for having the wrong opinions. Where does this end?
Yeah, where does it end? And with respect, Anthony, you are in a position of relative power in this discussion, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, the government has actually said on this point about freedom of speech, that I think it's completely unacceptable that banks would close down somebody's account because they don't like what they say about something that's totally legal. You know, we have freedom of speech, freedom of belief in this country, and if banks start debanking things, which is a really extreme measure, has a severe impact on people's lives because they don't like what they say about something, then that will have a really chilling effect on freedom of debate in the UK. I think it should be absolutely, should not be able to do that. The government thinks that as well. They've got a consultation on at the moment about what to do about it, because there's a lot of stories coming out about this now. There's been a lot in different media, and it's clearly completely unacceptable. And the government's got this call for evidence. If you've got examples, the viewers have got examples of this happening, tell the government we want to know what the banks are really up to, and then we'll look at what measures we can take to stop them doing it, because they should not be debanking people because they don't like what they say when it's completely legal.
Yeah, exactly. You made a great point there, which is that people like yourself and Nigel have got some form of platform, and then you can highlight it and it can get traction. And often we know what it's like. You know, if companies are willing to pull out of something because they get 5 mean tweets, you know, about, oh, you've offended this kind of person, then I suppose it will work the other way. If you kick up enough of a fuss, then they might row back on what they were doing. But it's about affecting the little guy, isn't it? But I was looking before about half of high street banks apparently have signed up to this Stonewall charter, the Stonewall programme, which on the face of it, you know, you could be said, oh, it's just a nice thing to, maybe help with equality in the workplace. My concern would be that going forward, a customer tweets something like, I think that men shouldn't be allowed in women's changing rooms, and all of a sudden you have contravened the bank's ethical code, and before you know it, you've had your account closed. I mean, could we really be hurtling towards that kind of world, do you think?
Well, it seems that we are, and so I think what we have to start with is the idea that free speech is for everybody, and banks and electricity providers and other organisations that essentially have a near monopoly on the basic services of life that we all enjoy. They don't get to get involved in all of this political stuff. And we have to get the idea of hate speech out of this conversation. I mean, people are allowed to have opinions that some people don't like. And what's interesting for us is, I would argue our podcast is to the left of GB News. So should your bank account be taken away? For working here, should GB News bank account be taken away? You know, this is a real problem, and there's got to be some urgent action on this, I think. I would hope very much that the government actually makes these banks think very carefully.
Well, the government has made, the Chancellor and the City Minister, Andrew Griffith, have made clear that they're completely opposed to banks being able to debank someone, close their account because they don't like what they're saying. It's a really, you know, that is something that completely goes against the sort of free and open society that we have.
What happens if, and this is hypothetical, so I admit that, but if when Nigel gets subject access requests back and this gathers momentum and no doubt other people come out of the woodwork, and it is revealed that banks have overtly said, we don't like this person's politics, you're not banking with us, and that person's just Nigel Farage. It's not someone who's signed up to some kind of banned terror organisation or something. What's the consequences there for the banks?
So I think, at the moment, I don't believe there are consequences, but we can change the laws or change the regulations on that to make sure there are consequences. And indeed, there is a source accounts in the Daily Mail today where they had insiders at Santander Bank where they're claiming exactly this, that people were closing their accounts down because they didn't like pride flags or something. And I don't know the truth of it, but it's certainly there as a story. What I think is really important, that when people have their accounts closed down, one, that they shouldn't be closed down for the wrong reason. They should be told why it is, except when they're being investigated by police and some other sort of associated circumstances. Two, that they should have the right to appeal. They should have the right, internally within the bank, but also then to the Financial Ombudsman Service, which is the court service for banks, and then they can get redress from that about the the inconvenience or the pain and the economic consequences caused. Because a lot of people, so small businesses get debanked as well, often, and small businesses that work in cryptocurrencies, or they do in like I've got involved in cases where they were like making arms for the UK, for the Ministry of Defence here.
We're arming our own nation.
I had meetings with the Defence Procurement Minister who called me in saying some of the SMEs that made just the UK government will losing their bank accounts because the banks are worried they might end their equipment they made for the UK government might somehow end up breaching sanctions with Iran, whatever. And those businesses, as a small business, you lose your bank account, you close down, you cannot operate.
Just one more to you, Constantine, if that's OK. People talk a lot about cancel culture. It's a big thing at the moment. And my concern would be that when people think, someone like Nigel Farage, he'll get cancelled for his views. And then it turns out You know, he wins loads of awards that the public vote for because he's actually very popular. And they think, oh, well, you know, GB News, oh, well, I've long left. And it says that we're smashing other news channels out of the water every single day now. And they think, right, well, we better rip his bank account away from him because it's the only way to stop him. I mean, do you think there is a bit of that going about?
Well, we don't know, and this is kind of the point about the banks not giving people information or, in my opinion, giving them inaccurate information about their accounts being closed down. As we talked about earlier, many of the excuses that people are being given don't make sense. With Nigel's case, let's say that he did go below the threshold. Well, why don't you tell him and give him an opportunity to remedy that?
Absolutely no reason for them not to tell him. If that were the case, they should have just told him.
And he would then have the opportunity to remedy that situation and retain his bank account.
And he might actually have some money. I mean, I don't know about Nigel's finances, but if somebody might have some money in another bank account, they could just transfer it over and keep the Coutts account.
So I think that we don't really know, and this is part of the problem, is we were treated with complete contempt by the bank. I think Nigel has been as well. And it was only the fact that we were essentially able to use the power of our voice to get attention for this issue that meant we actually got an answer. So that is, to me, the biggest problem. We actually need to get to the bottom of why this is happening, and then we can sort it out.
Well, I suspect that we are very quickly...
I was going to say, there's one reason why it's happening. Go back to the legislation. It is EU legislation. Okay. We've gold-plated it. That basically the banks can get heavily fined for not closing someone's account, but they can never get fined for closing it inappropriately. So for the banks, it's a one-way bet. When in doubt, just close it down.
Just close it. Right, OK. Look, both of you, thank you very much. I mean, it was absolutely fabulous, that discussion, wasn't it? Constantine Kissing there is the co-host of the podcast Trigonometry, and Anthony Brown, Conservative MP for South Cambridgeshire, former Chief Executive of the British Bankers Association. Now, we have actually launched a petition to prevent a cashless society. It's on our website, gbnews.com/cash. If you're watching us on telly, or you're watching us online, and if you've got a smartphone, what you will see now on your screen is a QR code. Hold your phone in front of that QR code and then follow the link. You can help GB News with our campaign to tell authorities, don't kill cash. We have already received more than 69,000 signatures at the moment, and that number, no doubt, will have gone up already just in the last couple of moments. Anthony, can I ask you, just while I've got you, very quickly, I'm going to get shouted at here. I know, I am putting you on the spot. I hadn't actually planned to do this, which shows my lack of...
that's all right.
But, look, we obviously want the government to try to commit to having cash as some form of legal tender and commonly accepted currency until 2050. Would you back that?
So, in the Financial Services and Markets Bill, which got Raw sent last week, there is actually provisions in there to ensure that people can carry on getting access to cash, and the government's committed to making sure that people can carry on using cash. And but if a shop decides not to use cash, it's quite difficult to tell them that they have to accept cash, because a lot of them don't want to.
Okay.
That's the problem.
All right, I did put you on the spot there. Apologies about that, but thank you very, very much. Right, Anthony Brown there, Conservative MP for South Cambridgeshire. Right, OK, well, we've still got loads to get through, ladies and gentlemen, so thank you very, very much for everybody who is still tuning in. Next on Farage, sitcoms like A Low, Faulty Towers and Dad's... I love this, by the way. And Dad's Army are partly to blame for Brexit, according to a historian. We will discuss with a star of one of those legendary comedies. You're going to have to stay tuned to find out who it is, though, but you will not be disappointed. See you in a sec.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians
to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Britain's news channel.
Well, it's been 6 months since the Prime Minister revealed his 5 pledges. Halve inflation, grow the economy, secure the future of public services, nice and vague, reduce NHS waiting lists and crack down on illegal migration. But he is still facing challenges to complete his goals, some of which were set to be achieved by the end of the year. I love a man with ambition, don't get me wrong. I think it was a fantastic, valiant idea. Doesn't appear to be working. Last night, his illegal migration bill was delivered a blow in the House of Lords as Labour and Lib Dem members forced through a number of changes to soften the legislation. In fact, I think it was absolutely scandalous. It comes after the European Convention on Human Rights had thwarted the government's Rwanda migration plans. Look, I'm going to ask our next guest, does Rishi need to exit the ECHR, abolish the House of Lords? How's he done in his first 6 months in charge? And you know what? We might even sneak in a little bit about one Bernard Jenkin, who might find himself maybe in a little bit of hot water with the Met Police over allegations about a lockdown-breaking party. Shocking stuff, if indeed true. Who better than the man himself? Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jacob, thank you very much. Let's just start with what we were talking about there, really. It's been 6 months of Rishi Sunak now. He's got his 5 pledges. I think illegal migration for many people is the most important one. The House of Lords last night ripped the teeth out of it yet again. What do you make of that?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, that the House of Lords is not acting in its proper constitutional role. It is a revising chamber. Its job is to say this bit of legislation gives too much power to the government. It should be done by an affirmative resolution rather than a negative resolution, boring, detailed stuff. What it's doing at the moment is opposing the government's political agenda. That's very different. It's got a majority against the government, and this bill that really comes from the manifesto commitment to get immigration down is now being torn to shreds, and I think they are abusing their position. You posed the question of what should the government do? Well, I'd hate to see the House of Lords abolished. I think it's really important to have a second chamber, and a second chamber that doesn't compete with the House of Commons. The House of Commons is the democratic house. It has the mandate from the British people. That's its strength, that's its right. The House of Lords, a revising chamber, the only solution is to appoint more peers. And we've got to carry on appointing until we can get our business through.
But it must feel to you like everything's a struggle at the minute. You know, you win an election, you try to enact a policy that is actually very popular with the illegal migration bill. It is, and if it passes the pub test, day in, day out, you walk to any pub in the country and it passes it. And then you're up against the lawyers, you're up against the Lords, you're up against all sorts of people. And it must be incredibly frustrating.
Yes, it is. We have ourselves to blame to an extent because we brought into law the Convention on Human Rights. So when the appeal court judges ruled against the government, they were doing so because of our domestic law, not because of European Convention law. applied by the European courts. But we should simply override that. We need to legislate to say this is what we will do, and then our courts will follow it. Should we carry on listening to judgments of the European Court of Human Rights? I think we should treat them in the way we did over prisoner voting rights and say, thank you so much, very interesting, but actually there's a mandate in Parliament to do something else. That's what we're going to carry on doing. Because bear in mind, the European Court of Human Rights does not have direct effect on the law of the land. It's not like the European Court of Justice in the EU. When the EU judges said this is the law, that was it. There was no appeal, there was no Parliament to change it, nothing. With the European Court of Human Rights, it's telling us we ought to change our law. And we can say, thank you so much, we're not going to. And that's the authority and power that we should use.
Look, quickly, Bernard Jenkin, your thoughts?
Well, it's deeply embarrassing for him, isn't it? That if you set yourself up as being Caesar's wife, you have to be above suspicion. And he has failed the above suspicion test, and we'll find out whether the investigation proves anything or it's merely a suspicion that he attended.
OK, well, time will tell. And again, very, very quickly, I couldn't let you go. I know you're a fantastic cricket lover. The Aussies, did they cheat?
They behaved within the rules, and actually I think the worst thing was the booing in the pavilion.
Yes.
The MCC is a wonderful bastion of tradition, and I love all that sort of thing. As you know, I'm a complete sucker for tradition and doing things properly. Good. You can't then show bad manners, and I thought that was really bad manners, and I care more about that than whether the Australians were highly competitive, pushed the law to the maximum. They're the Australians. What do we expect them to do? I mean, it's not a vicarage tea party.
No, it's not.
You're playing the Ashes against Australia.
And actually, I think he had been a bit too matey up until then as well, to be honest. Go on, what was coming up, PD?
What's coming up? Well, we're going to be talking about woke corporatism. Unilever being called by the Ukrainian government a supporter of Russia. We'll be discussing that, the banks and their behaviour. And then we're also going to be talking, actually, about Rishi, his 6 months, a bit about immigration and the new Conservative Ginger Group.
Right, OK, lovely to say the best till the last there. Jacob, thank you very much. Jacob Rees-Mogg. Right, OK, look, I'm getting shouted at. When I come back, we will be finding out from Sue Hodge, star of A Lower Low. She joins me to give her verdict on the comedy being blamed for Brexit. That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, the big Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Listen to this and see if it inspired you to vote for Brexit.
Good morning. Good morning. Outside the front of your coffee, under the limp post, are a couple of tits.
Oh, fantastic. Now, look, apparently, according to one study from one university, a lower low and faulty towers and things like that are to blame for the public's ambivalence towards the European Union, and that's why we voted for Brexit. Now, Sue Hodge joins me, the star of the sitcom she played, of course, Mimi LeBlanc in a lower low. Yes, good stuff. I'm so sorry we've not got long, but what do you feel personally responsible for Brexit?
Bonsoir, you little petit falou. Darling, I was going to bring you some celery, but I didn't want anyone to say, oh, she was poking fun at wet celery. So I brought your carrot instead, OK?
This is brilliant. This is brilliant. OK, all right, fair enough. Dare I ask, did you vote for Brexit?
Do you? Oh, how could you suggest such a thing from me? Listen, I thought I was going to be known and remembered for making that wonderful programme, Hello Hello, that sold to 95 countries, making me somewhat international. But no, not now. I'm going to be remembered for being part of the cause of Brexit. Darling, I'm just going to be legendary everywhere.
You absolutely are. And look, I mean, when you made that, did you have any idea that you would one day be blamed for us leaving the European Union?
Do you know what a naughty little historian he is, really, to say such things? I mean, when he says things like, the public just took it as light-hearted, they warmed to it, it was just light entertainment. Did you not think that's because actually that's what it was?
Look, fantastic. I'm so sorry that we've got to go, but I absolutely love you. That was Sue Hodge. I'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Jacob Rees-Mogg next, State of the Nation. Peace.
Hello there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. After a soggy Tuesday in many parts, it does turn drier eventually overnight. And it looks like Wednesday will be a fine day for many. Still some showers about, but actually a better chance of some drier and brighter interludes. We've seen the wet weather arrive in the south through the day. That's slow to clear overnight. And with the rain across central and southeastern parts of England, we've got a blustery wind that blows through the channel. And increasingly, that wind is going to affect the Low Countries by the start of Wednesday. Some very strong winds for the likes of the Netherlands and Germany. But across the UK, it does settle down later on with clear spells, but also still a few showers about first thing across parts of Wales, northwest England, eastern Scotland as well. However, for many, it's a better day with longer bright and dry spells, some glimmers of sunlight coming through. And in some spots, actually, it's going to be mostly dry, but there'll still be a scattering of showers out there. And it's still going to be relatively cool compared with much of June. But temperatures are about bang on average. We're looking at 22, 23 Celsius in the south, 18 to 21 further north. Then the showers ease away across central and southern parts of the UK overnight, but they'll keep going across northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. Thicker clouds